Hello again, welcome back to the Cage Rage podcast. How's everybody doing out there today? CPR is glad to have the audience back with us, and I am here with my co-host and fight analyst, Miguel Iturrate. Miguel, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Chad. Glad to be back and get ready to rage a little bit, I guess.
I love that picture behind you, man. That's got to be the goriest boxing picture of all time. It'd be a shame if we ever changed it.
Yeah, the bottom line is like I said, to me, the history of boxing and MMA are very similar, and I think it gives an idea of boxing is very specialized now, but it was very raw back in the day.
Yeah, so that gives me a segue into what I wanted to talk about with the crowd today, which is we want to fill them in a little bit more on where we're going with this, because we've had a lot of the questions regarding kind of what are you guys actually trying to do, because we get the feeling you're going here, you're going there. What is the actual thesis of this, the entire program? And the podcast, the Cage Rage podcast, is actually about tying together the historicity of MMA and boxing with current events. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the current events of MMA as they stand today in this podcast. On another podcast that'll be coming up, we're going to be talking about the current events of boxing. And then on a following podcast, we're going to be talking about the historicity of MMA and how that relates to current events that are currently happening in MMA, and the same goes for boxing. So for those in the audience that have been sending those kind of questions and asking, that's sort of what we're going for. I hope that answers a little bit of your question, and the rest of it, you're just going to have to play along with us and see where we go, because the truth is we don't always know where we're going. We try to play it by ear and keep it live, and hopefully the spontaneity increases the creativity that we have, and we believe that that's always been the fruit that's bared us the best flavor. So, having said all of that, hey, I was right about Nate Diaz, right?
Well, yeah, you said, you questioned whether the fight was going to happen, and, I didn't see it coming because I thought that it was a well-placed fight, especially for both guys. I think Poirier was getting a bump in, stature in terms of payday and things like that because he was fighting a guy who's a made guy, I thought Diaz, it was the right time for him to come back and get a fight in and be in the mix again. So I didn't foresee it happen. Now, Poirier got hurt, and that type of thing does happen, so you have to say, but yeah, you did question the fight. And then from there, everything, I think the reason you were questioning is because Nate Diaz is a little bit of an X factor, and, after Poirier became injured, from there, everything that you said becomes a factor, and that is, clearing what we get, and that is that Nate Diaz doesn't have a fight. It's not like they were going to replace somebody. Nate Diaz was like, all right, bring on Nurmagomedov. They're not going to give Nurmagomedov and afterward. They can't, afterward. So it just wasn't. So he's like in left field while the UFC's in right field again. And that's always an X factor with the Diaz brothers, right? So, yeah, we don't get Poirier Diaz. You're right.
Well, let's explore the idea of what the conspiracy is, because, okay, so to take the viewer back, in our last MMA podcast, we talked about the conspiracy behind, kind of to wrap it up in a nutshell, the conspiracy was, all of this happened so that they could do the second fight with McGregor and Khabib, and maybe, and there's been talk, McGregor threw the fight, and, all that kind of nonsense. Clearly, he didn't throw the fight. He just got smoked. But having said that, that doesn't mean that there weren't factors put in place that were built into it, that if A, then B. And that's kind of what I was saying, as far as I didn't necessarily mean that Nate was going to back out of the fight or whatever. I didn't mean for it to come across like that, although it might have. More what I was suggesting was that Diaz wants to fight McGregor. That's his real fight. And I still think that could be the fight that happens. Because I think the fight that happens now is McGregor's comeback fight. I mean, man, he got trounced. He didn't go out there and have a pretty good fight and a pretty good showing against Nurmagomedov. He got his ass beat. And it was pretty obvious when he's sitting there against the cage and he's not standing up and he's kind of shaking his head. And he clearly was absolutely decimated. And he knew that he'd been beaten in a way that he wasn't going to talk his way out of. He'd had his mouth shut. He'd had his mouth stapled shut with Khabib's fists. And so the UFC has a contingency plan, let's say, that, hey, Poirier, you just got hurt in practice. Here's some money. Shut up. You're going to go get some stem cell treatment and some this and some that. And you're going to live well. Don't worry about it. You're getting paid anyway. It's under the table and nothing matters. And this is a conspiracy that I'm saying is just one of them floating around, and there are numerous different equations out there that people can go through and figure out on their own. This is just one. It's one possibility. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea. But it could be Conor comes back and fights Nate for the rubber match, and then that's completed. And then that contract is fulfilled one way or another. They make a ton of money on that. And I think Conor probably wins that because he's now he's got no ring rust on him. He's a much bigger person than he was the first and second time they fought. I think he's a much better fighter, although I sure as hell didn't see any difference on the ground as far as the way he was able to handle, top pressure. And, Nate's going to put sort of that same top pressure game on him. It's a different kind of top pressure, but Nate's going to float on top of him. He's going to move through, and he's not going to get off of Conor. He's going to keep him down, and he's going to move over him. And Conor's not just going to be able to get into guard and control that situation, right?
If they get there, let me start from
Okay, so I was all over the place there, so pick that apart for me. Analyze that. Yeah. There's three things.
No, I think everything you said is very true. Let's just say, put it this way, I think McGregor and Diaz is a very different fight. If it goes to the ground, I see Diaz being more on the bottom, but Diaz could apply just as much pressure from the bottom as Nurmagomedov from the top in terms of threat. Not the same kind of bruising, grinding pressure, but he could be a threat and maybe even more of a dangerous threat if Diaz is, really on his game. They love their jiu-jitsu. They're proud of it, and I think he'd like nothing more to, hand him his arm back or something like that. So yeah. I see what you mean there. The deal is this: everything you said is very shrewd, and but I don't know. My feeling on this is that the Nurmagomedov. I think you're very shrewd in that. Nurmagomedov hops over the fence. I think the Diaz brothers are probably at the UFC, but they're sitting around watching. They're like, "Hey, that's our break, and man, I'm in now, man. I get him next. I get McGregor next. He's done." That may be their reaction. Then all of a sudden, they've always kind of had their own game plan, and they always kind of, tell people on Twitter or they communicate with their people, and it's a very vocal group, and they carry an entourage with their friends and people that bet on them, and
yeah.
When they put out a little message like that, hey, I'm in, sort of like when they did with the championship, the 165-pound championship, he marches to the beat of his own drum. UFC, they would have needed, I think, the Nurmagomedov thing happens, and they go, oh, fuck. And they don't know exactly what they're going to do. I think if you had allowed them to come to the conclusion of, all right, we're going to Nurmagomedov for a little while, we can do Diaz, and it may have come to that same conclusion, but kind of the way they put it there, the UFC likes to drive, and they're not driving that decision-making there, and that's what makes them uncomfortable. The thing to me there, the X factor there, since we're talking about it, is the Nurmagomedov thing is I'm not sure Nurmagomedov didn't play it exactly right in media with what he needed to do which is offended at me. You know what I mean? I think the critical difference in front of the commission, in front of lawyers, is that Nurmagomedov and McGregor, that transgression happened under the commission's watch. There was a fight going on, the commission is in charge, and they are there. The Boston, that's not going on. McGregor wasn't even contracted to fight that weekend. So where does the commission step in and make it here? It happened in New York, so the commission in New York make a statement, but there's nowhere in any of the UFC's paperwork the commission McGregor's name in terms of contracts, fights, or anything like that. Didn't make an appearance. So there is that legal difference, which may affect, at the end, grab Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov, in transgressions, if at some point the Las Vegas or the unified rules that they use are copy and pasted at some point for boxing, and I'm not sure the fighter can't leave the ring until the announcer makes a decision. If he's left the ring, he can lose. Buffalo announced that fight alone. You know, Nurmagomedov perhaps could be stripped under that legality. I don't think a strip of Nurmagomedov is the end of the world, although I think his pride would be hurt. But if you talk to him and say, look, this is how you can turn this into more money, first, you just keep winning. And he's going to say, yeah, I'll keep winning. So now you just keep winning, and you're going to fight this path. You come back, you fight McGregor again, and we get you become the pay-per-view guy or whatever. They can cut the deal with that.
Okay, so imagine this scenario too. Now we've got Ferguson in the weight. Ferguson is a hard fight. And Ferguson is a hard fight. I think Ferguson is it's kind of the same fight as Conor for Nurmagomedov, but I think it's a harder fight for him in a lot of ways because Ferguson has a way better gas tank, and I think he brings a completely different angle. That he's taller, he's way better on the ground, and he can do a lot of things that Conor just can't do. He just doesn't have that big left, but he's got a way better gas tank. Okay, so having said that, that's a fight that they could put in for Khabib, right? Could you agree with that?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay, so hold on. So having said that, what if their plan is, let's do whatever we've got to do to put Khabib on the shelf and make him rusty. Let's do whatever we've got to do to get Conor fresh, get Conor well, make Conor as healthy as possible, put Khabib against the fence, and make him suffer as much as possible. Make it hard on him, because let's face it, the last thing in the world they wanted to happen was what happened, which was that Conor went out there and got absolutely creamed. And I know I said, he won round 3 and had things gone slightly differently, maybe, but you watch the fight 5 times and you start to go, holy crap. I mean, there's just no looking at that fight and saying, if that fight goes 5 rounds, somehow Conor pulls out, 2 more rounds. It doesn't happen. Khabib controlled him start to finish, and in the 3rd round, Conor beat him by completely staying away from him and nothing else. And he never hurt him. He never had an affect where Khabib was like, oh my God, I have to recover from anything. It just didn't happen. So what if the UFC is saying, let's give Conor some time to figure out how to master this the way he figured out how to master the Diaz plan and come back and win. He's figured out how to master Diaz now. He's bigger. He's stronger. We put him in to fight Diaz. That keeps the ring rust off. It keeps him growing. It keeps him improving as a fighter. It keeps us making money. We believe he beats Diaz. If he does, whatever. If he doesn't, whatever. Because it's a non-title fight. So it's kind of a win-win situation for him either way. If he loses, oh well, it really doesn't do that much in his rankings because it's sort of it's sort of a non-ranked fight anyway, and maybe they're doing all of this to sort of put Khabib on the shelf. What do you think?
Yep, I think here's the deal is,
I know that makes the UFC sound like a bunch of sinister pricks.
no, I'm gonna tell you as a matchmaker, as somebody who if that had happened to me, how would I bounce back and deal with it? Okay.
Thank you.
The deal is this: is now if you matchmake purely on sport, the path here is pretty clear. Nurmagomedov suspended, stripped. Sorry, you jumped out of a cage, you attacked people. Your guy's in the corner. Maybe McGregor threw the first fight, but they came. He's looking around. He's starting to get surrounded, and your guys also threw punches. You guys were there aggressive. You guys took it a step far. You're going to serve me a year. Here's your $2 million for the fight. I'm not holding anything up. I think taking his money was you've taken life-changing money away from a guy, escalating in his view the situation, and he's going to say, yeah, you would have changed my life, but keep your fucking money. He's not an American who's going to come back and say, hey, my money, let's negotiate. No. He'll tell them to keep their money, I think, out of pride. I know that it's not the way to go, but I think you're talking about where they have a different mindset and a different thing. I think that messing with the money stuff, that's what commissions do, but I think that escalated it, and that you're talking about a guy that you got to deal with there. So I give him his money, I tell him to serve it. Now, this is the thing, is if you put McGregor in, to a fight with this guy or Diaz or anything like that, you're babying McGregor and doing exactly what you're bringing along. So, what does McGregor do? McGregor must fight Ferguson for the title now, next fight in 4 months. And Ferguson probably beat McGregor, and then you've lost the whole McGregor train. And that's what the UFC won't do, and nobody's talking about that fight. But that's what you should do, because Nurmagomedov comes and fights the winner as an elevated champion returning. And you give him a big fight, and it doesn't necessarily have to be McGregor, because the guy does everything he does, and you give him, carte blanche because he brings in money and stuff like that. That's sport. McGregor's the guy who just lost the championship fight. You put him in the fight. You give some, Poirier, Alvarez, all those guys weight. You've already given something to McGregor. That's all McGregor gets. He doesn't get the buy of avoiding Ferguson, because Ferguson will go into that fight a favorite with him.
I agree.
I think McGregor looks at him and says, I maybe can beat him because Ferguson's stand-up can get wild, and he's not if you see Titan boxing and stuff like that, you're going to catch with straight punches a guy who's coming at you from angles and wild the way Ferguson does. But can you handle Ferguson's all angle attack and things like that? And it's not only punches with Ferguson, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know if Ferguson that's the thing, is that's what alarms me as a guy that watches the sport, is nobody, because everybody in the back of their mind is, I want to see him fight Diaz again. I want to see Nurmagomedov beat up McGregor again. Nobody in that mindset just protects McGregor. Because what he should do is, if he's the guy is he should fight for the title again. He should fight the number one guy. The number one guy is clearly Ferguson. But that derails the whole trade if it goes wrong, and that's why they're avoiding it. And that's embarrassing.